Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Real Ballz podcast. It is Monday, October 29th, and got an awesome show today. Going to be talking about the U.S. Open and basically how the U.S. Open forgot some of their best bowlers in the world, best legends of all time, in an attempt to make the U.S. Open the most prestigious event. They have forgotten the aging legends that are no longer included in their qualifications. But first, I want to dive in and just say that the statistics so far for the U.S. Open have been through the roof. I mean, my goodness, Chris Prather continues to just tear through the field, and they've cut down. They're at 24 now. But I want to go through this U.S. Open automatic entry criteria. And on this automatic entry criteria, and a lot of you have seen or are starting to see the post I just put out from Friday that covered the USBC satisfaction report. And I'm all for the USBC trying to make the US Open prestigious, trying to make it important, make it matter, make it a more important event than what it has been in years past. Because in years past, it's the same with the PBA. The PBA wants so badly to have success. They want so badly to have a crossover between sports and, regular mainstream sports and bowling that they don't necessarily realize how they come off. And I understand that the USBC, they want so badly to have mainstream crossover and really make it a prestigious event, have the normal bowlers, and the same with the PBA, have the normal bowlers out there creating fans, creating followings, things of that nature. So it's important what they're doing. But I think that what they've done is they've forgotten a lot of people that actually deserve to compete in the U.S. Open, but may not make a particular list. And one of the biggest feats on that list is what you do the prior year. It may not be what you've done in your prior career, but what you've done in the prior year. So I'm going to go through this U.S. Open automatic entry criteria, and then you guys can tell me if you notice anything, wrong. But the top 50 PBA members on the 2017 PBA Tour money list get invited. Okay, so if you're a PBA player and you're out there competing and you're relatively good, if you're good enough to be in the top 50 and actually be a PBA member that competes on tour in enough events, top 50 is not a huge, if you're number 49 or 50 or 40 to 50, you're still not making a ton of money. If you look on the PBA's website, you see guys on there that are in the top 50 that are not really guys that you'd be like, that guy deserves a U.S. Open spot over somebody else. But the top 5 bowlers on the 2017 World Bowling Tour men's points list get on there that are not on the top 50 PBA money list. So if you compete on the WBT, you get on there. You get invited to compete in the U.S. Open. The top 2 PBA members on each 2017 PBA regional points list: Central, East, Midwest, Northwest, South, Southwest, West, not on the top PBA 50 money list, or top 50 PBA money list. So if you're not on the top 50 PBA money list, you get invited. So essentially, if you're on the top 50 in PBA money, if you are top 5 for the World Bowling Tour, if you are one of the top 2 in each region, so not even out on the regular tour, but each region, whether it's the Central, Midwest, whatever. So you're not even competing on a national tour, but you get invited to the U.S. Open to fill the field. And there's a lot of bowlers that have full-time jobs. I understand that maybe the best bowlers in the world aren't out there competing every week because they have full-time jobs that pay better. It makes sense. But, you're looking at 2, 4, basically 6, 7 different divisions that add, 2 players. So you're looking at another 14 bowlers that may or may not compete on the actual PBA Tour. So when you look at that, you think, okay, give or take those people, 10 most recent U.S. Open champions not on the PBA money list. Makes sense. You win the U.S. Open, you get 10 years worth of U.S. Opens. Okay, fair enough. 2017 Team USA members. Okay, you represent your country. Fair enough. And it's a USBC event. Okay, USBC, as we learned in the survey on Friday, though, the USBC has zero support for Team USA, according to the survey in my last podcast. Now, the top 6 amateurs based on 15 qualifying games at the 2017 USBC Masters. So, based on 15 qualifying games at the Masters, the top 6 amateurs, not professionals, not PBA players, not Team USA, but top 6 amateurs get spots to compete. The top 6 all events finishers at the Open Championships. Okay, so we're not talking amateurs, we're not talking PBA players, we're not talking Team USA, World Bowling Tour, or even the regional guys. We're talking top 6 all events finishers at the Open Championships. So I haven't been to an Open Championships, but you go to an Open Championships, you could catch lightning in a bottle, do well, hit all 3 patterns suddenly, and finish 6th, and now you're one of 6 entries allowed into the U.S. Open. Okay, the top 2 men from each of the 4 2017 Intercollegiate Singles Championship sectionals. So the 4 sectionals, 2 men out of each intercollegiate one gets invited. So that's 8 added to the field right there. Now, the 2017 Junior Gold U20 Boys Champion. Okay, makes sense. U20, that's usually an adult. It's usually won by someone who's anywhere between 18 and 20. It's a USBC event. Makes sense to let that person in. Then you get the 10 U.S. Open direct qualifiers. So if you don't qualify for one of those many spots there, you get to go to a qualifier. You get to go to the PTQ. Now, the problem I have is not that these guys could go to the PTQ. I don't have any problem with that. The problem I have is that they have totally left out the PBA 50. So we're including Team USA, 2017 Junior Team USA, top 6 amateurs from the Masters, top 6 all events from the Open Championships, 8 additional bowlers from the 2017 Intercollegiate Singles Championships, and then everybody else is a PTQ qualifier after that. And you think about that, and you say, we're inviting all those people, but we've left out the PBA 50, which if you look at the PBA 50 now, the PBA 50 is essentially the Legends Tour. If you really want to break it down, look at some of the best bowlers that have ever competed in the history of bowling. They are on the PBA 50 Tour. We've got regional guys out there that haven't accomplished one bit of success comparative to some of these guys left off. Some of these guys that are in the collegiate championships weren't even swimming around in their dad's ball sack when some of these guys won titles that are on the PBA 50 Tour. And I'm not talking about guys that are old. I'm talking about guys that are in their 50s. Guys that are in their 50s that dedicated their lives. And most glaringly, obviously, is what Lucas Wiseman reported for Flow Bowling, which was about Amleto. Amleto not being invited. And like he said, he paid his dues, or he thought he had paid his dues already. But the fact is that according to the USBC, they get it wrong again. They leave out one category, maybe something like the Hall of Fame category or the Legends category or the, make over $1 million on tour category. I don't know. Make a category for these guys that are, like Bob Learn, like Amleto, people like that they're bowling on the PBA 50 Tour. They may not be bowling on the regular tour anymore, but suddenly now they're not eligible for the U.S. Open. You watch a guy like Amleto who just missed the round of 24. I think he finished like 27th. And he had to bowl the PTQ to get in and got in, still walked away with a couple grand for his finish. But when you think about that, you think about the fact that a guy who can be the first foreign-born Hall of Famer on the PBA Tour, a guy who won his first title, 30 years ago? Okay? Won the Japan Cup in 2016, and this guy can't get into the U.S. Open. He's made numerous PBA 50 final shows and won a couple over the last couple years. You got Bob Wern, who makes basically what feels like every PBA 50 show. You know, it's just amazing to me that these guys get totally ignored and can't get their entries in. But, you know, another one that really caught my attention is I want to go over a couple of the people who do make this list. And some of them decline and whatnot. But obviously you're going to have a lot of your PBA players. A lot of them won't surprise you. But I'll read a few PBA players who might surprise you. So, obviously Dick Allen's in there. He's got a couple 300 so far during the U.S. Open, so that's pretty awesome. He's doing really well. You know, Shota, he missed the deadline. Liz Johnson declined. Jacob Buttriff declined. Matt Sanders withdrew. Pete Weber had to withdraw. But you got guys like Sean Maldonado, Chris Loschetter, DJ Archer missed deadline. You got Ronnie Russell, Sam Cooley, Darren Tang, Brad Angelo, Anthony Pepe, Cameron Weir, Graham Fall, Chris Prather, who is obviously lighting it up. John Zerbinski missed the deadline. You got Fran Lau, Osku, Kyle Sherman, he withdrew. Brian Smith was invited, declined. Brandon Novak, Brad Miller, Charlie Brown, Dave Watka declined. Dave Watka got invited. Okay, Jeff Evans was invited, missed the deadline. Brian LeClaire missed deadline. Trey Ford, Amleto won titles. I think Amleto has been in the Hall of Fame since before Trey Ford's, you know, was even a twinkle in his dad's eye. You know, I mean, come on, give me a break. Are you kidding me? God. Arturo was invited, missed the deadline. Sean Lavery Spar, Dino, Mitch Beasley declined. These guys made it, okay? And you could argue PBA players, fine. Okay, let's go to the World Bowling Tour. Pontus Anderson, Jari Ratia, and I probably butcher these names, and I'm sorry, but I don't know you, and I don't know how to pronounce your name, so get over it. Kim Bolaby, Daniel Franson, Anders Lusdahl, and Michael Mack. And, I mean, Daniel Franson was a staffer when we were at Ultimate, and, you know, good bowler, but World Bowling Tour, when you compare these guys' resumes compared to some of these legends that are out there who aren't getting these invites, it's incredible. 10 U.S. Open winners not on the PBA money list. Mike Scroggins declined. Walter Ray Williams Jr., you know, accepted. Mika missed deadline. Robert Smith missed deadline. Bob Wern withdrew. Dave Husted missed deadline. Justin Romack, Del Ballard Jr. declined. Robert Lawrence. So you see some of these legends, but, you know, the only reason Bob, you know, was invited was because he had won a U.S. Open. It had nothing to do with the fact that he was on the PBA money list, okay? So when you think about that, you think about the fact that you don't make the money list. If you don't make the money list and you're on the PBA Tour, you're screwed, you know, unless you've won it before. They leave these legends of the PBA 50 out, whereas if Bob wanted to bowl, he shouldn't have to have won the U.S. Open to bowl. He should be able to bowl based on the fact that his prior experiences on the PBA Tour have qualified him to bowl. His prior, what he's given back to the game over that time. And you could argue that there'd be a ton of people out there, but there are certain people that hold certain records that, you know, maybe have won titles or crossed money thresholds over a career that should be invited to bowl. Now, the regional points list. Kyle Mayberry, Aaron Lawrence, Matt O'Grady, which it's good to see Matt O'Grady got his invite. Alex Cavaganera, or whatever the fuck his name is. Kevin Donovan, Greg Ostrander, Tom Hess, Stephen Taylor. Now, I mean, we recognize Tom Hess on there. David Barris, Nathan Mikulowski, Craig Tucholsky, PJ Haggerty, former Team USA guy, Dean Richards, Robert Harmon, Edward Souza, Greg Thompson, Christian Escona, who recently has been winning quite a bit. He won quite a bit in 2017. Chris Polizzi, Anthony Lavery Spar, Mike Bailey, Chris Warren, David Haynes. David Haynes is an awesome regional player. So that some of those guys deserve to be out there. But do any of them deserve to be out there more than Amleto deserves to be out there? I'd argue probably not. And we've got, Team USA, Andrew Kane, AJ Chapman, Kyle King, Nick Pate, Matt Russo, Chris Vi, Brandon Biondo, Jared Armstrong, Brian Halen, Briley Hoff, Jeffrey Mann, Kenan McFalls, Thomas McNeil, Richard Paul, Cortez Schenk, Pete Vergos, Dustin Zahner. So some of these guys I know personally, some of them I don't. AJ Chapman's a great guy, and he's going to end up being an awesome player in time. He made a show last year, was on our staff. Let's see, we have Jeffrey Mann. Jeffrey Mann, I've drilled balls for him for years. Also an awesome guy, won junior gold in 2016. Currently in college, so I can understand why he would decline. But does he deserve an invite? Sure. Brandon Biondo, Brandon Biondo's had a strong, couple years. Chris Vi. Some of these guys, obviously, they deserve to compete, but do they deserve to compete over other people? That's my big thing, is do they deserve to compete over someone who's got a Hall of Fame career? When I look at 2017 USBC Masters, okay, these are the guys that are going to really make you go, does this guy really deserve to be there? 2017 USBC Masters. So these are the guys, the amateur guys, that were the top 5 or 6 or whatever. Nick Krummel, Michael Tang, Brennan Hoff, Daniel Bach, Alexander Hoskins, Dallas Leon, Cody Holbach. Okay, Holbeck. Okay, then 2017 USBC Open Championships. So the ones that were in the all events category that were invited. Kenneth Ryan, Jacob Boresh, Joe Bailey, Todd Lathrop, Chris Gibbons, Curtis Woods Jr., Zach Hattori, Mike Reisner, and Kurt Dupre. Okay, so Zach Hattori withdrew, but he's a strong bowler. Jacob Boresh, I'm sure is pretty good, but still not even close to the resume of some of these Hall of Famers that don't get to bowl. 2017 Intercollegiate Singles Championship Sectional Qualifiers. Andrew Kopech, Andrew Dukowski, Nicholas Cefalo, Nico Vicari, Brian Dragotta, Michael Coffey, Joshua Schneider, Daniel Hansen, Josh Taylor, and Scott Hill. None of those guys, not one of them, deserves to compete in the U.S. Open more than someone who is similar to Amleto or Mike Wolf. I saw Mike Wolf was on the PTQ trying to compete for a spot as well. When I look at those guys trying to compete for those spots in that PTQ, Cameron Doyle hasn't done a ton out on tour, but he's done more in time than a lot of these guys have. So when you add it up, could you argue that Cameron Doyle has more experience out on tour, that maybe he deserves to be out there more than some of these guys do? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, if he's a full-time tour player, I think if you're a full-time tour player, you should have the option to compete in the U.S. Open. But I think there's got to be limitations, just like anything else. I just think that the U.S. Open, once again, gets it wrong. It's the USBC gets it wrong. In their attempt to do the right thing, they once again have done the wrong thing, and they have made it so that it actually is causing more problems than it wasn't. And I'm sure that they didn't plan on that. I'm sure they planned on the fact that, hey, what are the odds that Amleto or a legend or like Mike Wolf or someone like that, who's Mike Wolf just won a title like 2 years ago. What's the odds that they're going to want to bowl? Okay, well, I don't know. But if they want to bowl, could we argue that if you've won a PBA national title in the last, 3 years, you get a spot if you want it? There's got to be a way to issue these, and I just got to believe that there's a better way than just going, okay, the top 5 in all events at the Open Championships gets this. And I know that that's got to be the result of simply wanting to get more people to bowl the Open Championships, or the top 5 of the amateurs of the Masters. Do we really think that the top 5 amateurs of the Masters are going to win the U.S. Open? Probably not. I mean, let's be honest here. It probably isn't going to happen. But the fact is that the U.S. Open is a prestigious event. But I don't think the U.S. Open means that only people from the U.S. can compete, and the first foreign-born Hall of Famer is not allowed. Okay, and I know that was a total low blow, and it doesn't actually apply here. But the fact is that when you look at someone who's had a career, like Amleto said in his own words, he thought he had already paid his dues. And I would agree. I would think that after 30 years, when some of these kids weren't even born, you were winning titles, that you have already paid your dues, especially if you still want to compete. And over 4 patterns, the versatility of it all shows that they can still compete. Just because they choose not to compete on the PBA Tour on a regular basis doesn't mean that they're not competing on the PBA 50 Tour. There's a lot of people out there on that PBA 50 Tour who really deserve to be invited. I don't know if he was invited or not because I haven't looked over the list that hard, but Ron Moore, I would put Ron Moore up against half those guys out there. Ron Moore could, have no problem bowling on these patterns, just like he bowls with the best of the best. You got Parker, you got Walter, you got all these guys out on the PBA 50 tour, and, Norm, Pete Weber, Bob, Amleto, you got all these guys out there bowling on the PBA 50 tour. And yet, we have no entry basis for the PBA 50, okay? It's just absolutely insane. I just think it's a disgrace. I think it really is. I think it basically is a disgrace to the fact that, and in the ultimate disrespect to those that have sacrificed everything, including many of them who have sacrificed their pensions, okay? Sacrificed their pensions because their pensions wound up being dry, when they went to go collect them after the PBA screwed them out of those. So, the fact is that they've sacrificed their entire lives to devote to bowling and competing in bowling and making their living bowling. But what do? We instead put a bunch of amateurs, put some open championship all events players, put some intercollegiate kids out there, instead of putting some of the greatest bowlers that have ever honored the sport of bowling into the U.S. Open. It is an absolute disgrace. There's no other way to describe it. I cannot figure out or fathom why they wouldn't figure this out ahead of time. Everybody gets old. Chad Murphy, you're going to get old. It's actually kind of hard, but you're going to get older, okay? And the fact is you may look at it and say, well, I'm doing it better or I'm making it better. And I would agree, in some aspects you really are. But in some aspects you are dropping the ball, okay? You're in charge of all this stuff, and you have got to be responsible to say, you know what? We're going to make a legends exception here. We're going to make a rule. We're going to make sure that this never happens again. If in 2019 this same thing happens again, there should be absolutely no tolerance for it. None. Okay, I could understand how it could ruffle some feathers and whatnot, but the fact of the matter is when you read through that bullshit list of players who qualified, and you look at the people who didn't qualify, and you say, wow, what a shock that these guys are getting to bowl, while these guys who have dedicated their lives to the sport of bowling are left out. That is total bullshit. That's all there is to it. And I hate to swear like this, I really do, because it's just not a good look, especially on such an important topic. But the fact of the matter is that there is no reason for this to ever happen. Ever. There's no reason for this to happen. They should have easily said, you know what, you get a commissioner's exemption or you get a director's exemption. We're going to let you in just because. We're not going to embarrass you by making you bowl the PTQ. That's like saying to, Tiger Woods or somebody like that, saying, hey, Arnold Palmer, we know you were good. Not the greatest of all time, but we know you were good. We know you're a Hall of Famer, but we're going to send you down so that you can play on the Champions Tour so you can qualify for this event. What a joke. I give Tom Clark hell for his tweets when he's, tweeting and trying to make, Mookie Betts into the greatest thing that ever happened to bowling. But you know what? At least he's trying to create crossover and he's trying to build something up. But the fact is that when it comes to the USBC and the ways that they can drop the ball, for every good thing you guys do, boy, you sure seem to piss all over yourself in another category. And this is one of those. This really is. You have absolutely taken the people who have given their all to the game and done more for the game than most of those people at the USBC will ever do. And most of those people who compete at that US Open will ever do. You have taken those people and you have made them not even good enough to compete in your event. You have disgraced the US Open by trying to make it prestigious. You have disgraced the U.S. Open by trying to make sure that only the best compete by leaving out the best ever. It's just, when you think these things out, maybe you should involve more people to sit there and go, well, you know what? Some of those players might be in their 50s that can still win this thing. Like Amleto said, He thought he had already paid his dues, and I would agree with him. I think he has, and I think it's a disgrace that the U.S. Open did this to him, and I think it's a disgrace to a lot of PBA 50 players who deserve to be out there, that the guys on the PBA, regional list, they get 2 out of every region, but the PBA 50 tour gets none. I think that's bullshit. I really do. I think it's ridiculous. And so they can say, well, a lot of those guys that competed on PBA 50 competed on the PBA tour, and a lot of them don't. So if they already compete on the PBA tour, their spot can go to somebody else. They can still have the PBA 50 spot or whichever one. The fact is it's unexcusable. It's unexcusable on the USBC's part, and a total disgrace to what they've done to try to make the event prestigious. That's all I can say. But I will be back on Wednesday and Friday, 5 o'clock for the Real Ballz podcast. I'm Ryan Squires, your host as always. Make sure to check out my USBC edition that I did on Friday that I just shared out today, and it actually will cover the report, basically summarizing where the USBC said they're doing an awesome job. And then I will debate that right there on that Friday show, so check that out. And then I will see you guys again on Wednesday at 5 o'clock, Real Ballz podcast. I'm Ryan Squires. See you then.